Thanks everybody for joining us for another edition of Leadership Rounds. We're going to have conversations with really leaders across Georgia and beyond, shaping healthcare and so many other policy areas. And I'm pleased to introduce and welcome this month's guest, Chris Clark, President and CEO of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. Chris, welcome. I'm going to give everybody a short kind of your canned bio for just a moment, and then we'll talk about it. Chris is a Georgia native and has served as the president and CEO of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce since 2010. Chris previously served as a commissioner of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, executive director of the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, and as deputy commissioner of the Department of Economic Development, among other positions. He's a graduate of Georgia Southern University and Georgia College and State University. In 2023, Chris published his first book, The CEO Imperative, which we'll talk about. He and his wife, Tiffany, live in Peachtree City, and their son attends the University of Georgia. Chris, thank you so much. Go Dogs, that's right. They're going to have a good game coming up later this month. In-town rivalry looks to be maybe one of the best matchups in a number of years.
I hope it's not as many overtimes as it was a year ago, though. So, but yeah, looking forward to that game.
I'm looking forward to that, too. All right, so I read your canned bio for everyone. First of all, thank you for doing this. Thank you. We are obviously members of the chamber. Many of our hospitals are members of their local chambers. So thank you for being with us today and for what you do. Read your canned bio, but tell us a little bit more how it happened, right? Like you and I share something in common, that we've had a number of different roles within state government and found ourselves doing association work on the back end, but Georgia Southern, and now here you are.
First of all, thanks for what you do and the partnership that we have, and we do share a lot of members around the state. But no, I don't know that anybody would have sat down and written out a career progression quite like I had, and that's fine. But yeah, I worked for Georgia Southern after I did a campaign right after I graduated college, slept on the floor of the campaign headquarters because they couldn't pay me enough to afford rent. And then recruited for Georgia Southern for a couple of years, and then grad school, and worked 3 jobs while putting myself through grad school. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was in a class one night at Georgia College, and we had some outside guys come in to talk about different parts of state government. And these 2 guys came in to talk about economic development. And after it was over, I followed them down the hall. I said, "Can I buy you guys a Coke and talk about this?" And they walked me through their careers, what they were doing. And one of them's still a really good friend of mine today. And I said, "That's what I want to do." And so I got a chamber job in Hawkinsville, then an economic development job in Fayette County, and then worked closely with Governor Perdue when he ran for office. And then that's how I got into state government. He said, "Okay, you helped me get elected, now come." And that's when I became deputy commissioner, and then that path is there. And, coming to the chamber was something that I always kind of thought maybe one day I might get to do that. And then Mike and Suzanne, he was president of Georgia Power, she was president of AGL, both cornered me when I was DNR commissioner and worked with me for about a year to convince me that this was the right next step. And I've been here ever since.
15 years.
15 years, yeah.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Especially as my mother, Caylee, it was funny because my mother said, "I'm finally glad that you can keep a job." She thought it looked bad to her friends that I had, multiple jobs in a few years. So
I feel you. I get you. I understand. So, but all well worth it, and service well paid to the state. So thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the chamber's role, your role within the state, how you work with local chambers, and then how you really, similar to the hospital association, you represent such a diverse set of interests. We're at least an industry aligned, but you've got so many diverse interests. How is that from a leadership perspective? How do you do that? How do you and your team really do that?
Well, it is. You think about our organization, we're one of the largest business associations in the country. We've got 50,000 members, 180 local chambers, binational chambers around the state. We represent 500 SIC codes. We've got at least one member in every county, so 159 counties, all represented in Georgia. And, at the end of the day, we're here to serve them. We're here to serve our members, to serve those local chambers. And so it's just a lot of focus on what do they need and how do we meet those needs. We have an office in Tifton, which helps us reach that part of the state. We have an office in Brunswick, which helps us reach the coast. Headquarters, obviously, here in Atlanta. But no, it's just, I think it's a mindset. And particularly the relationship with the local chambers is critically important because they're the boots on the ground. We want them to be strong. We want them to be successful. We want every one of our members to be a member of them. And so we spend a lot of time supporting, working, being in their communities, helping them plan strategy, thought leadership, just anything that they need all day, every day. And so that they can then magnify, the policy, the governmental affairs. We try not to duplicate what they do. They might be able to lobby their legislator in Savannah, but they're probably not going to be able to lobby their legislator in Albany, right? Or a legislator in Atlanta. So that's the role that we play, is that bridge. And, we were created, 115, 16 years ago to represent those businesses, to represent small chambers of commerce around the state, and to help with economic development. And that's exactly what we've been doing ever since.
You bring up a good point in terms of economic development. Georgia, I joke with Pat Wilson, which you certainly played a role in that as well. We're now, 11th year in a row, 12th year in a row, the number one state in which to business.
Yep.
How really does the chamber play a role in that? I mean, I don't think a lot of people understand some of the behind the scenes kind of all the companies that band together to really go out and recruit and what that really looks like.
Yeah, I think there's two parts of it. One is, I think what you're referring to right off the bat is the Georgia Allies, which is a group of about 20 or so groups that the Georgia Chamber helped start in 1996 when the Olympics came. And we're all pooling money, working together, going around the world, hosting, selling, doing anything Pat needs us to do, right? To back up him, the governor. A lot of our allies are actually in Japan right now at Seuss Japan, telling that story. But the other side of the house, I think where I feel like is more an important role for the chamber, Pat and his team and our local economic developers are recruiting companies, helping retain companies, helping them grow, but they've got to have the right environment and the right workforce. And that's our job, right? This tax credit doesn't work. Let the Georgia Chamber go fix it. There's an upcoming issue that's going to get in the way of business growth. Let us go work on that and fix it. And so, we don't ever need to get credit or to be at the ribbon cuttings and all that fun stuff, but we're the behind the scenes, get it done, look at the data, back up, so that the business climate and environment for the state is exactly what Pat needs it to be when he's selling us in Germany or Brazil.
I don't have it handy. I don't think it's on my desk, my shelf here, but certainly data I use from time to time in the Red Book and all the data by county that y'all compile. So thank y'all for doing that. It is such an important role. You mentioned everything it takes to really make Georgia sellable. Can you maybe share with the group kind of your current thoughts around healthcare and kind of where the hospital industry fits into that overall picture? Honored to be at the Rural Prosperity Summit last couple of weeks ago, but just your thoughts on how folks are starting to recognize healthcare as a real key component, even more so than in prior years.
Yeah, I think we started using the term a few years ago that healthcare is infrastructure, right? I mean, it is. And the truth is if we don't have access to quality care in a community, they're not going to be successful. I was in a rural community last week talking to their leadership group, and the head of their chamber, their chairman, I asked him about the healthcare system locally. And his wife was sitting beside him and started rubbing his arm. And he says, I had a heart attack a few months ago, and it took 40 minutes for the ambulance to get here. It took 40 minutes for the ambulance to get me to the nearest hospital, which was literally 2 towns away. That community, we're probably never going to be able to recruit an industrial prospect there without a quality healthcare system. And so that's part of the role that hospitals play. But the other part is your economic engines within your own right? And I think it's kind of like, I think Chancellor Perdue's done a real good job of making sure that we all know how important our universities are and what they put in the community. But quite frankly, where you've got a hospital in Georgia, I guarantee you're one of the top 2 employers in that whole county, which means you're probably one of the top 2 payroll tax providers. You're probably the largest donor to United Way. You're probably the largest donor to the youth sports in those communities. And so, they play an incredible role. But I think from a legislator's mindset, from a Georgia citizen's mindset, to get them to understand, just like you expect government to invest in roads and bridges and deepen in the port, there's a role that government has to play in healthcare. And so that's part of, I think, the story we have to continue to tell. What I hear the most right now is the biggest concern is just the lack of healthcare workforce and what and I know it's an important part for what y'all are working on. And we're going to be there with you working on that issue. And I talk about it literally on my 150 speeches this year. I've talked about the needs of healthcare and the career pathways that are there that I think a lot of our communities they overlook.
That's right. You're right. We're working on that pretty significantly, and thankful to the governor and all of our higher ed partners at his workforce summit last week. Was a great conversation, really starting to hone in on healthcare. And thank you. I didn't even tee you up for this, but I put hopefully the finishing touches on our own press release this morning on our updated statewide economic impact number. And it's significant. So I'll send that your way as soon as we send it out.
Cool.
So you wrote a book, The CEO Imperative.
Yeah.
Tell listeners that haven't read it maybe what that's about, and what brought you to that point in your career where you felt really called to write that.
And it was a calling, and I appreciate that. I had a young mentor during COVID a mentee that we have from a program we do at Georgia College, and he was a very faith-filled young man. And we were talking one night, and he said, you're so lucky you get to work with governors and CEOs around the state. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, what values do you glean from them that make them successful versus all these CEOs that we were seeing at the time that were quite frankly failing? And Caylee, I didn't have a good answer, so I made some stuff up, and he smiled and said, okay, great. And then I was doing my Bible study the next night, and it was like this tap on my shoulder that he deserved better than me blowing him off. Mm-hmm. And so I literally went through my mentor, back of an envelope, and then I spent probably a year just digging into whether it's Harvard or Deloitte, what everybody was saying was what we needed in leaders at that point, what CEOs needed to take into the boardroom. And then I just went out and started interviewing my mentors, just sitting down. And what I found consistently is those that were successful, that were able to pivot during COVID, that had a great workplace environment, that they all had incredible faith, and they let that faith be front and center. They were authentic in who they were and what they did at the work, whether they're at work, at home, they were coaching Little League. And so I wrote the CEO Imperative just to tell that story, because I found that so many executives try to do everything that they're supposed to do, and they're so worried about, checking their real selves at the door. And I just wanted them to be authentic, to be courageous, no matter what their faith is, to be able to bring that part of themselves, because I think that's what makes them an authentic leader at the end of the day. And so the book is basically just walking through some of those stories of great Georgia executives like Jimmy Blanchard, Teresa White, Hank Lincolnfelter, just people that made a difference to me, my mentors, that I felt did things in a very unique way. And so in the book, we talk about the importance of humility, the importance of corporate culture, of being servant-hearted. So that's what it was. So it really was a calling to try to tell that, and just letting executives know that it's okay to be who you really are, and to be authentic with your teams if you want to have the right type of environment long term for your growth of your organization.
So let's talk about your leadership in that kind of context for a second. You're obviously a gifted leader and have led multiple organizations. You're a gifted public speaker, who I learned a lot from watching you. Well, what are some of the things that you have to work harder at or hire around you, like to balance out your leadership skill set?
Yeah, I think two things, one very personal and one not. I mean, listen, I can think big. I need people to execute. Mm-hmm. Right. I that's how our house works too. I can think big, but my wife is the executor. She's the CFO and COO. Some days she's the CEO too, let me be clear. But I know I have to have people that have great attention to detail and like to get into the mechanics of the policy or the data or whatever that might be. And I'm gifted to have so many, just blessed to have so many gifted individuals here at the chamber to do that. I think the other part for me personally is you have to keep your pride in check. Have to keep your ego in check, that it's not about me. And I think we all get caught up into that at some point. I know I have in my past, and so it's really hard to to manage that and to manage yourself, particularly when you're in these little bubbles of leadership and you're around people that are in bubbles of leadership. And so that's something I just always remind myself of and keep myself in check.
It's I think there's so many good stories there about how we maintain like really feet on the ground and be humbled. I've blessed to have worked in the governor's office and seen a ton of people get sworn into varying positions. And it's always fun. And for me personally too, my husband always tells me when my son is around, especially when he was younger, he humanizes me and like keeps me grounded. Like it's a whole different role to play mom. And it was always fun. There were one or two stories of mutual colleagues that we share. I won't name names, but would bring in their family and like little babies to get sworn in. And once or twice, babies cry, they get messy. And I've seen, very professional men and women get spit up on by an infant in the governor's ceremonial office. And it's just such a good reminder that we're human too, right? Like we have bad
Right.
days, things happen, like coming to work with peanut butter in my hair, just like everybody else. So kids do that for us. So
They do. Yep.
what are your non-negotiables, as I call them, things that happen every day in your life in order for Chris Clark, his family, and the chamber to run, whether or not that's professional, personal, people know I'm got to get to the gym, got to get some movement, or I'm just grumpy. And breakfast with my son. What are those things that have to happen in your life every day?
Yeah, I think, it evolves over time. I mean, when my son was little, I wanted to be the one to take him to school, in kindergarten every day. That was very important for me. There was a point in life where I needed to make sure I was in the gym, 4 or 5 times, where I had to run every day. I'm too old for that now. But for me, it's faith and family. I have to every day, non-negotiable. I'm going to do my Bible study. I'm going to read my devotional. I'm going to spend time with my family. Whether it's if I'm on the road, it's a phone call. I don't care what it is, texting. Those are just non-negotiable for me. I'm not ever going to be where I can't take that time to have a faith-based moment. Yeah, I don't negotiate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you network? How do you continue to learn? Like not who are your peers necessarily, but how do you find those venues where you continue to learn and surround yourself with people that you consider your peers? It gets harder, certainly,
Yeah.
but do you still have those avenues and how do you seek those opportunities out?
I do. We've got a great national network of state chamber professionals. There's 46 of us. I'm the second longest serving one now, which means I'm the old guy. And so getting on Zoom calls or texting with my peer down in Florida, having our teams interact with local chamber presidents, all those are important. I think for me, as far as the learning goes, I'm just a voracious reader. I want to read everything I can so I can understand what's coming. I want to look at the data. I want to understand it. And so it is we talk a lot about lifelong learning. I really want to understand. And I think the more I can understand, the better job I can do. And then the other part of that is just listening to our members, just like you do. I mean, you spend time every day hearing about what works, what doesn't work. I do that as well, and that helps me learn and can keep growing.
What are you reading right now? Or have you read recently?
Well, I read a lot. So I am doing, I mentioned this before, but normally I read the Bible all the way through every year. But this year I'm doing the New Testament twice. I'm doing a C.S. Lewis devotional a day. But I've just finished reading Radical Candor by Kim Scott. She was an executive with Google and Apple, who talks about how we should be more honest in a loving way with our employees and our team members if we want them to continue to grow. And then I've got 3 books I'm reading right now all on artificial intelligence, just from different perspectives, including one that Henry Kissinger wrote. It was his last book that he wrote. AI, I can't remember the name. It's something AI in the title. I got 3 of them I'm working through right now.
I'm going to keep a list of all these, I think, and start sharing them with folks. I think I have a New Year's resolution around 2026 though about finishing all the books that I'm halfway through before I get another one, but I keep adding to the list.
Yeah.
If you could have a conversation with yourself, maybe not 10 years ago, because that's starting to feel more recent, but maybe 15 or 18 years ago, what would you tell yourself?
So I think it'd be two things. One, it's go back to the pride thing to make sure that you keep your ego in check and your pride. It's not about you. It's about serving others and to be a servant-hearted leader. That's the expectation. I think what I've learned though in the last couple years that I definitely didn't understand younger, and I think maybe this applies to your members around the state too, is I think being in the roles that we're in, we have to take care of ourselves. You mentioned being in the gym, physical as well as mental. We have a mutual one of your members who's on my board and your board, and we both love him to death. A couple weeks ago, he was in Atlanta for a lunch meeting, and then he was back in his community that night for another meeting. And I just thought about him that we spend so much time on the road. For a hospital administrator, you're trying to be everything to your nurses, your doctors, your staff, your community, your legislators, your congressmen, your national association, your state association, your local chamber. Those expectations, none of us can live up to them. And we kind of got to learn to say no or to be more selective and to give ourselves grace. I think we're great at giving others grace, but maybe not ourselves. And so I would say, I wish I had learned to take care of myself better, both mentally, physically, emotionally, earlier in my career. I think I would have been, better at interpersonal relationships and lots of other things. But whether it's your spiritual side, it's your emotional side, we can't push ourselves too far and expect ourselves to continue to be able to perform like our teams need us to or like our families do. And so I wish I had learned that lesson before I'm my age now.
It's a good lesson.
So,
All right, only a couple minutes left. So, big question. What do you see in 2026? What are you excited about? What makes you nervous? What's the chamber going to focus on?
yeah. Well, I'll leave I think the biggest, the 800-pound gorilla that you and I and everybody are going to deal with is basically this election that'll be the largest turnover at the state Senate. And I think we're tracking right now maybe 15 to 20 years. Largest turnover in state government, at least in the last 10 to 12 years now. I think making sure that those elected officials that are running or those candidates that are running understand what's important for healthcare, for workforce development, for energy and infrastructure. So we're going to be spending a lot of time telling that story, sitting down with candidates, bringing them in, and then basically preparing ourselves for that new governor, lieutenant governor, new Senate leadership to be able to go in and say, we're here, we want to be a partner with you. And I think for your members, as well as you think not just the policy side of the House, but the political side. I mean, your members need to be writing checks to your PAC. They need to be involved in this election cycle. They need to be asking the tough questions of these candidates. Did you support us on tort reform? Are you going to be there with us when we have to look at the impact of Medicare? I mean, all these questions need to be conversations that we're having with these elected leaders now so that we got a jump start for 2027 when they all get sworn in and we're there at the inauguration that night. And so, yeah, everything is really built from a policy standpoint. I'd say number one, protect tort reform, and then prepare for this new cycle by having these conversations.
Anything at the national level really in 26 or you are, I mean, I know that you're talking a lot about tariffs. Certainly we feel those impacts within the healthcare industry with, not only pharmaceuticals that are being imported, but also DME and all the other kind of durable goods that continue to see price increases.
Yeah, I think the other big one is visa reform. Listen, 24% of all the nurses in the nation, right, are foreign born. And so these new rules that are out there are really hurting. I mean, farmers, they're going to hurt, administrators and others. And so I think from the folks that we talk to at the national level, there might be an opening here in 2026 once we get through the midterms or get close to find at least some visa, maybe not complete immigration reform, but now that the border's secure, address visa. I think the president has said he's willing to take a look at it. And so that's going to be what I hope can be a positive outcome in the midst of a lot of other uncertainty for next year.
Well, I'm checking my time. It looks like we're about out. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for
Of
being a
course.
good example of leadership and for doing the work that you've done, not just at the chamber, but throughout your career, and especially at the chamber for making sure that healthcare stays part of those conversations at the top of your policy priorities as well. So thank you for leading the way on tort reform with us. Certainly, we look forward to all the outcomes of that and are already feeling them, but can't thank you enough for your time today. So to our members, our audience, stay tuned. We'll make some announcements on next month's guests coming up shortly. But thank you for joining us today, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Caylee.